Okay. So I'm calling to calling this meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission of the Town of Clarkdale, Tuesday, November 7th, 2023, 6:30 p.m. Thank you all for coming. May I please have a roll call?
Commissioner Stein,
Present.
Commissioner Higgins,
Here.
Commissioner Lindner,
Present.
Vice Chair Gabar,
Here.
and Chair Gibson.
Present. Thank you very much. And I want to apologize for missing the meeting 2 weeks ago. We had an email snafu with the staff and we've got that all figured out now. So I did listen to the recording and go through the reports. And so it sounds like we're moving in the right direction. And then we'll get a report later on that bandstand issue. Okay. There's one person present in the public. Did she have something to say? Or that person have something to say?
See Mala,
Yes.
do you have anything? She hasn't unmuted her mic.
Okay. All right. Well, if she doesn't have anything, she can pipe in later if something.
No, just here to listen.
Okay.
On the memo.
Great, thank you. No, I didn't see that. Thank you. Okay, no comment. All right. Let's move on to the next item. Minutes. Okay, I'll entertain a motion to approve the minutes from October 3rd, 2023.
If I may speak, there's one
Oh,
issue with
Do you want to go ahead and make the motion?
motion to discuss the minutes.
Mm-hmm.
I move to discuss the
Okay,
minutes.
can I have a second? Okay, Linda, thank you. Okay. Commissioner Stein.
I abstained in the vote to approve the previous minutes.
Okay,
It says aye.
okay,
Gotcha. We'll fix that.
okay, and we could do that administratively. Make that switch. Abstain. Really. Okay, is there any other comments on the meetings from October 3rd? Hearing none. All those in favor of approving these minutes?
Aye.
Aye, okay. We have a 5-0 approving the minutes. Okay. Okay, 5-0. Okay. Item 5, discussion items only, no action taken. Item A, the historic preservation ordinance. Assistant Town Manager Ruth Mayday.
Good evening, Commissioners. Before you, you have the almost final draft. It seems like it's pre-final draft number 432 of the historic preservation ordinance. So I wanted to walk through this one more time. So we can go to the first text slide. We have it up here. It's not easy for the commissioners to read, but if anyone watching on Zoom can keep track of where we're at when we're talking about. So I just wanted to kind of walk through these sections and discuss a little bit about what we have included, what changes we've made, and any changes that the commission wants to propose. So obviously first we have the purpose section, and that's just so that we can explain to whoever's reading the ordinance what it is that we're proposing to do with this section of text. Here in this one, obviously for the preservation of buildings, we did reference the historic resource survey by Don Ryden in 1989 and the National Register listing that was approved on January 1st of 1988. And here we just talk about some of the reasons that we're doing the ordinance for the preservation, encouraging identification, recognition of significant historic resources, encouraging sensitive adaptation and reuse of historic properties, supporting historic tourism, and those sorts of things that are the reasons that we're moving forward with this ordinance and that we want to implement it in the first place. So the second section talks about the historic district designation, and we want to, so we've included a map. Rather, the actual enabling ordinance, when we do send this to town council, will have a legal description.
Okay.
But, that would be pages and pages and pages that nobody wants to read. So we wanted to stick here with an illustration of what's included in that boundary and what's not. So you can see that we've included some of the area, well, quite a bit of the area down around the railroad, the industrial park, the historic buildings that are part of Clarkdale Minerals or Clarkdale Metals, just so that there's a fair amount of vacant land in there, so that any new construction will follow the new construction regulations in here, and any reuse or rehabilitation of buildings will follow those guidelines in here. So, as some of you may know, the state of Arizona had a referendum about 2008, 2009, shortly after the Kelo decision, that requires that, or actually precludes jurisdictions from enacting ordinances that could restrict somebody's private property rights. So we can't make this mandatory, we make it optional, which is why we're doing an overlay district with this. And the language that we have in here under B kind of hints at that. So properties electing to adhere to the requirements of the historic preservation ordinance shall inure to the following benefits. So accelerated review, accelerated permitting, and waived application fees for historic preservation projects. So essentially, the only board that has the authority to waive or change application fees is town council. So this would be something that they may look at when this goes to council for approval, whether or not they want to approve the waived application fees. They're typically not substantial, but it should be enough to encourage somebody to actually avail themselves to the benefit of this ordinance. Otherwise, they're stuck with the hard zoning that we already have there. And this ordinance allows them quite a bit of flexibility and latitude in how we interpret and how we apply the ordinance. So if you want to take advantage of some of the things in this ordinance, such as the consideration of variances as part of the approval process, you can elect to do that. If you elect not to do it, then you have to go through those processes individually. So if you want an area variance or variance or parking regulations or something like that, then you have to go through that process with town council as a separate activity, rather than all in one bundle. So section 3-170-030 development standards. So we went into some detail here. We tried to use a lot of photos and identify architectural elements of these buildings. Not everyone that owns a historic building knows all of the names for all of the parts. And so it doesn't do us a lot of good to tell people that they have to maintain their parapet wall or repair it if they don't know what a parapet wall is. So we wanted to use examples from downtown Clarkdale, from the historic downtown, because there are so many of them, to call out those features and then to help give context to the context we're looking for in essentially. So we call out adjoining spaces because that's one of the citing issues or citing criteria that staff would be looking at in reviewing applications. Does anybody have any questions so far? Any comments?
We have quite the library of architectural detail, so might as well use our own.
Right. I think Commissioner Biggins had something.
Yes, just real quick, when you say accelerated review, that's kind of vague. I mean, there's a certain review time process for permits, I assume within like 90 days or something.
So yes.
So I guess my question would be, well, what's accelerated? Are we talking 2 weeks, 30 days? I think.
Yes, accelerated would mean that your project moves to the front of the line rather than in a queue for approvals.
Yeah, it just seems very vague to me. accelerated.
Right.
It's not a guarantee.
So we can't give you, I can't tell you 7 days because it may be 8, it may be 5, it may be 9. Just because I have no idea in the future when we get these
Yeah.
applications and what the workload looks like.
Maybe we could just, I don't know if it could be redefined, so whoever needs to permit knows what that is. It just seems very open-ended. That's all. I don't know.
Commissioner Linden.
Yeah, I have a question, just regarding what that first sentence means.
Which
Prop-
first sentence?
B on page
B1.
215, well, actually, the introductory.
Oh,
sentence.
okay.
Properties electing to adhere to the requirements of the HPO. Does that mean that owners can opt out?
We have no option but to let them opt out. I
Because
cannot,
of the Keogh decision.
right, because of the Prop 207, we cannot require, I can't compel them to do something that could affect the value of their property.
So we're open to discussion right now, correct?
I'm sorry?
Yes,
We can,
please.
Yes.
okay, I just don't.
Go ahead. Yeah,
wanna-
this is a discussion item, and so as long as Ruth opened the floor, so.
So I've been thinking about this
Yes.
and opting to adhere to something implicit in the proposition, the state legislative proposition is the idea that to adhere to a historic preservation ordinance is to devalue a piece of property. And so my thought was that perhaps we can add under purpose,
Mhm.
something to contradict that suggestion. And my thought was, because we've got protecting and encouraging and ensuring and encouraging and supporting and protecting and preserving. It would be nice to throw something in there like enhancing the value of the historic community.
Particularly since that's where all the academic research indicates. You know,
It is true.
It does.
But if we said enhancing the value
Mhm.
of the downtown or historic district property, because if by following it, they're enhancing the value as opposed to detracting or diminishing the value. So if we put enhancing in here, maybe that would inspire people. And especially since what we're talking about is the prime business real estate in Clarkdale. So it's going to be enhanced. It's location, and we've just added location on there because it's the historic district. So if we added another purpose statement that says enhancing the value.
Yes, absolutely can do that.
And then number 4, this is just a bone, and this would fall into the commission people who've been working on this project well before I walked in, but something that would say, we're going to accelerate the review of the project and the permitting, and we'll waive the fee. But what if we were to include something in the nature of include interpretive signage that indicates this is a new building, but how wonderful that the owners and contractors adhered to our, this isn't original, but we're so delighted that it's here. Let's put a sign out for
infill.
for the community, to praise or welcome the new construction that follows the ordinance, but also because we talk about the locals and the tourists. And so that our tourist community can say, look what someone did to be a part of Clarkdale, so some kind of interpretive signage.
Yeah.
And that one would have to go with I know that there are people who've been discussing the interpretive signage well before I showed up.
Right.
But it would just be another way of, another bone or another encouragement to follow the historic ordinance.
Right.
Right, because if it was done well, in 5 or 10 years, somebody might come along and not realize that was not a historic building. And then you would want to differentiate that.
Right, it's coming up with those inducements to get people
Right.
to participate. I have a really small toolbox where that's, this is about the limit of what I can do.
Right.
There was a couple of years back, I believe it was the attorney for the SHPO, who made a very strong argument that the Prop 207, this Prop 207, did not apply to historic buildings.
Oh, really?
I believe he went to the National Trust.
So it wasn't illegal
No,
opinion, it was just
he
a
made this,
personal opinion.
right, he had this whole analysis of how this did not apply, how Prop 207 didn't apply to this. And then went to I think he went to the National Trust for Historic Preservation, and nobody has kind of picked up that ball yet.
Interesting. Commissioner Lindner.
Yeah, I'd like to go back to this opt-out idea, because we have,
Yeah, I
well,
don't get it.
this didn't really come up until late in the discussion after, certain members of the council got involved and a member of the public got involved. We weren't discussing that you must have a provision to opt out up until that point. And we have this provision, section 3-170-050 for a certificate of hardship. So I would think that in order to opt out, you would have to pass those criteria. Otherwise, any ordinance that gets passed by the town, somebody can just say, hey, I'm opting out because you've evaluated my property without providing any kind of evidence whatsoever.
Only if it changes, if it affects the valuation of your property.
True, but how do you know that it affects the valuation of the property unless you've done some kind of analysis in terms of what that evaluation is?
Right, so the benchmark is diminution of value, right? So, and that's, so when we do pass, when Cottonwood passed their expanded historic preservation ordinance, they did it as an overlay district for this very reason. Is because of the Prop 207 language. We did discuss this very early on in the process when we were talking about this, is how we would likely have to do this as an overlay because of Prop 207. So it's something that we've gone through trying to figure out. Like I said, I have a very shallow toolbox when it comes to what we can do to make this beneficial to people. The town manager and town council get really twitchy when I start talking about tax abatements, property tax abatements.
Well, they'll already be getting one if they had joined if they're on the, join the,
That's only for residential at the state level.
okay, right.
You can do
Okay.
you can do the commercial at the federal level.
Okay. Right. Okay, because they didn't do the tax breaks for signing up for the historic.
For the
On
commercial, right.
just on residential.
And that's an anomaly. Most places, most states, it's if you have, or at least I can tell you in Michigan, if you have a commercial building, you can get that property tax abatement at the local level as well. Here you can't. I don't know why.
Yeah,
I don't know.
well, it's Arizona.
But it's an issue. So with respect to B here, if anyone does have any ideas, and I mean any ideas, we'll entertain with respect to trying to encourage people to participate.
Yeah.
It's a tough one. It really puts staff in
All
a
the
tough spot.
academic research is that joining the preservation district actually raises your property value. So I don't know why we're even having this
And that's
discussion.
exactly the argument that the attorney, I think his name was Chris, made with.
But I mean, I brought piles of research in a couple months ago.
Yes.
I couldn't find the one thing I found, and it was done by a real estate developer. And it was only because if you had low-income housing in the historic district, then property values would rise. And of course, you'd have to raise rents, and that might kick people out of that district. But we have very few, if any,
And most.
like that facility in this
Right.
district.
So having done the finance part of these kinds of projects before, I can tell you that there are, when developers look at projects like this and they put together a development package on a lot of these larger ones, especially those that use the federal tax credits, one of the things they look at are mixed use projects, so they can get that steady income stream from a residential. And very frequently they will look at things like, here ADOH for low to moderate income housing subsidies and things like that to help make the projects pencil.
Right, but in our case, that would be brand new.
Yeah, it would be brand new. So I mean, those are some of the things that you can do, but really for us, the issue here is how do we encourage people to do this?
Commissioner Lindner, sorry.
Yeah, so this just kind of leaves me completely confused in terms of if somebody elects to opt out, then what can they do without approval?
So
and
then,
Review. I mean,
right. So that process would be what we call hard zoning, right? So here are the regulations, thou shalt be built to the property lot, to the lot line up front. Thou shalt have X number of parking stalls. You know,
All thou
these, it's
shalt.
all thou shall do these things. And then it would go to Historic Preservation Commission because upon the adoption of this, Historic Preservation Commission would be design review for this historic district. So it comes back to you guys,
Regardless, okay.
right, as design review for the opt-outs.
So now what you just told us, is that specifically stated in the, if you decide to opt out?
Well, if you opt out, you're still governed by the underlying zoning.
You
Does
just
it,
don't-
what you can do, we don't have to say it because it's either this or hard zoning. You start with the hard zoning, you can opt into this. If you choose not to opt into this, then you're stuck with the existing zoning regulations.
Can we make the wording a little less detailed instead of saying properties electing? Could we say properties that adhere to? Then it's not like, oh, I don't have to adhere, I don't have to elect to do it. Even though we know they have the,
Right, taking the
Yeah.
verb out there.
yeah.
Taking the verb out, it makes them seem less empowered.
Leave out The fact that you don't have to.
Well, then they don't,
No,
well, no, it's not, is there anywhere in the lawyer word that you have to say elect to?
I kind of
Say
like
properties
that,
that
Dan.
adhere to the requirements.
We just say properties adhering.
Yeah,
Adhere.
properties that adhere to the requirements.
No, properties which embrace the requirements.
There you go, that's even better.
That embrace the requirements shall.
No, you don't have to say
embrace
shall.
it. The attorney will.
Not shall.
Embrace is a word.
But embrace,
Embrace.
Yeah.
I know.
That's a word that needs to be defined also. I think that is very clear,
Yes.
Commissioner Lindner. It's kind of a discussion, so you can just throw in if you want, if there's a side elbow in to
Well,
get there.
again, the opt-out process, it says that they have to go through a normal design review process. But really, what purpose does that serve if they don't have to follow anything that we recommend or say in our hearings? For example, if I'm looking at page 4 of 15, and we're looking at the clear story windows, which uses the prism glass, which is something that, is somewhat unique to Clarkdale in terms of there's not any incontinent, if there is, there's very little left. It seems like somebody could come in, even if that was in good shape, and they said, well, no, I want to replace it with tinted glass. And we would have no teeth in our ordinance whatsoever.
No, you would, because the design, this ordinance would not apply. It would be hard zoning for design review board. And in design review, those are the kinds of things that you would be looking at. We're gonna take all of the nice prism glass out, that's nice and purpley because it's been there for so long, and we're gonna put up tinted glass. Nope, that's not compatible with surrounding buildings. That's not
So-
compatible with the nature of the historic district.
I'd like to embrace.
But I guess then you're kind of just subject to the strength of your commission doing the review and whether or not, they really understand the underlying fundamental design principles and have the backbone to stand up and challenge something like
Well,
If
that.
it's
That's
in
true
the
at
district,
this point.
It still comes through this commission.
Because it's in this district.
Because this district will be, because this commission will become design review for
For this
the historic district. It won't be design review board anymore. It will be Historic Preservation Commission.
Okay, so let me put this out there. If they do decide not to embrace the Historic Preservation District, what can they get away with?
So now we go back to the hard zoning. Gus, is there any way you can get to the zoning code from there?
Chapter 11. But I thought the historic pres.
No. On the,
All separate, because
Go to, let me.
town code.
You can find the town code.
Oh, I don't find it every day. I just need to get the internet up.
So I just got a question on the scenario. So say the Historic Preservation Commission says, no, we're not gonna allow whatever it is you want to do. Doesn't it go to the town council? The town council can override that?
Yeah,
So see, this is the issue I see, because we've already been told that they don't have to listen to us at all, in a way. So that concerns me, that we could have a real, meaningful state that this shouldn't happen, but for some whatever reason, it gets overridden by the town council. And it kind of defeats the purpose of historic preservation.
right.
You'd have to go to the internet to get it. Oh, gotcha.
Now, it occurred to me that instead of a workshop on open meeting law, maybe a workshop on the value of historic preservation out of the different ways that it would help the town and things like that might be better.
Pull it up over here. So here's the town website. Where chapter 11 is, the time review.
Time review and site plan review.
Right, so then you no, we're gonna go to design review, purpose and applicability of design. Very top.
First one,
There
Oh, there you go.
you go. All right.
it's still can.
So I'm gonna read it from here so that everybody can hear it. So the purpose of design review is to review the exterior design of proposed new buildings, proposed alterations to buildings, and major development or redevelopment projects which do not include new buildings within the town of Clarkdale in order to ensure that new development or redevelopment is compatible with the surrounding environment and to preserve and protect the integrity and character of the town.
Okay,
This ordinance shall apply to new buildings and redevelopments defined in this ordinance and for the town of Clarkdale zoning ordinance, except single-family dwellings and accessory uses. It shall also apply to all public buildings and facilities. Structures other than buildings, signs, landscaping, parking areas, public facilities, and enclosures will be reviewed by the design review board if a part of a new building development or building redevelopment. So in other words, if you're gonna come in and redevelop a commercial building and you want to add a shed or a storage building, you have to bring it in all at once. So this is, can you scroll down, Gus? So this is just what we require for an application. Keep going. Keep going. Keep going. So here's the design review criteria. So this is what you would be reviewing to, right? Architectural merit. The architecture and design shall be visually compatible with the buildings, structures, and places to which it is related. Proportion. The relationship of the width of the building or structure to its height shall be visually compatible with the building, structures, and places to which it is related, or shall be maintained as original whenever considered. Openings, the relationship of the width of the windows and doors to the height of windows and doors to the building shall be visually compatible with building structures and places to which it is related. Pattern, the relationship of solids to voids in a facade of a building or structure shall be visually compatible with building structures and places to which they are related. Spacing, this relationship of the building to the open space between it and the adjoining building shall be visually compatible to the building structures and places to which it is related. Entrances, porches, and projections. The height projection supports the relationship to streets and sidewalks of entrances, porches, awnings, canopies, balconies of a building shall be visually compatible to the building structures and places to which it is related. Materials, textures, and colors. Materials, textures, and colors of the facade of a building shall be visually compatible with predominant materials, textures, and colors. Roof shape and materials of buildings shall be visually compatible. Architectural details, doors, windows, eaves, cornices, and other architectural details of the building or structure shall be compatible.
So, I'm sorry, Ruth.
go ahead.
Can I just ask a quick question? Because, I understand the connection now, and I see the strength in if someone chooses not to embrace the historic.
And they're going to embrace this.
Yeah,
And
yeah.
this language is all, so I won't comment on the language, but the Planning and Review Commission and the Historic Preservation Commission, we make recommendations, and it's still the town council that can choose to support
They can accept, deny, or amend.
the commission's recommendation.
Mhm.
And they can also choose to accept, deny, or amend if someone chooses not to follow these.
No, they have to follow these.
Okay,
So if they say, I'm opting out of this, I don't want to be bothered with this, then you're
yeah,
defaulting to, this is the default. This is default, this is optional.
so I guess one might look at this and say it's all very subjective as to what is visually compatible. And so this is,
But we've had a couple of instances where, especially like newsstand is one that we did, where we did go through and talk about visual compatibility and what was compatible and what was not compatible.
mhm.
So there are ways to work through that.
Okay, the newsstand is a good example. So if the ordinance was in place, the newsstand would have come to us,
Right, and not, there would not have.
not the design review board at all.
Right,
Okay. For the exterior part of the building.
correct. The interior, we include interior just so you can get an idea of what it is they're
Right.
trying to achieve,
Right.
but really that's limited by building code. Okay, anything else on that part?
Commissioner Linder had some.
Yeah, I would still request that, our Historic Preservation Commission receive some guidance from the town attorney on this interpretation. Because it just doesn't, I've never seen an ordinance that where you can just say, hey, I'm not gonna do this
Yeah,
because of this prop, you know,
But I'm gonna-
that's like the idle threat that's always out there, and it seems like without any substantiation whatsoever, then we're immediately caving on it, and if that's the case, I don't see any value in this document whatsoever. I don't understand how you can call it an ordinance if people don't have to follow it.
This is, so to be clear, this is an overlay district. It is overlays the existing zoning.
I understand that. I understand that, and we have the criteria in there that says, you know, if there is, what we call economic hardship,
Mhm.
certificate of hardship, then you can get certain exemptions.
Great.
But that is a process where you have to substantiate, you know, what those hardships are. This general statement, and I don't like the wording of it. It's very, it's very hidden. It's not out in the open. And you have to read it very carefully that, yeah, what this really means is that we're allowing an opt-out clause. It doesn't require any kind of substantiation whatsoever, other than to say, I don't want to. I mean, I don't know. Does anybody see it that way?
well, I'm just looking at the definition of an ordinance. It says an authoritative rule or law. That means you have to comply with whatever that is. You can't just say it can opt out if that's really an ordinance.
But that proposition supersedes that definition.
I'd have to read that proposition, because unlike with Commissioner Linder, what's the purpose of the ordinance if you just opt out? It's not an ordinance anymore. It's just a guideline.
This is what we are trying to do, right? And that's why we have this language in here about the accelerated review, accelerated permitting, waived application fees, is to make it attractive and beneficial for people to apply, to do this rather than not do it.
Yeah, I don't, I'm
You think
confused. I don't know. I mean, you might as well just have a design review process and not even worry about it, to be honest.
Well, I think that's what the intent.
That's what this is a design review
No,
process specific to the historic preservation district. Outside of that, that you would have for any other area in town. So
Then-
right now we have design review standards that are written for anywhere in town.
Right.
These are specific to the historic district.
I know, but if we're trying to preserve the history of the town and people can just opt out, and I know there's the other restrictions, but like she was saying, they've always been kind of vague guidelines. It's not really clear. You know, what they can what they can do and not do that's really historical. They get away with a lot of things that we determine not historical.
What does design review board use to judge on its criteria? That, do they have things like, you know, like you have made up here?
So when we take a project to them, we have, you know, this is where the structure would be, and this is what it looks like, and these are the adjoining buildings. This is the area around it. Does this fit in? Does it not?
But they don't have something like, this is the
This-
actual metric, you've got to meet this.
No,
but
we don't have
this
anything
would
this
be
detailed.
that.
That's what
Yeah.
the ordinance says.
So,
I embrace what both Commissioner Lindner has pointed out and Commissioner Biggins. I'm really bad with names, sorry.
All right, no.
Like, leaning over to. Because an ordinance is an ordinance and what we have are guidelines.
Right.
And so the document has no teeth. And we need to sell it to demonstrate that this would enhance the value of the property, because it really is the state legislation that says we can't do something that's going to devalue someone's property. And that all things are run through an attorney. All language is run through an attorney before it becomes an ordinance, is reasonable, because it is. So I suppose we're enticing individuals to adhere to our guidelines, which really aren't an ordinance,
They are an ordinance. They are adopted as an ordinance,
but
and it has the weight of law.
it has the weight of law if someone chooses to follow that law, which,
This is the anomaly of.
right. And so we're adding enticements to encourage people to follow them. And, you know, going to the front of the line with your project is certainly an enticement, and certainly not going to the front of the line and not having an expedited review process is not an enticement. And so if indeed anyone chooses to build a new structure in the overlay district, and this commission must first approve, then there may not be weight in the documentation in the ordinance, but there would certainly be weight in the evaluation process. Heavy weight. And it would go through 2 evaluation processes, yes, because it would go through planning or design review and then historic preservation, or just historic preservation. Even if they opt out of our guidelines, it
Right.
still comes to historic preservation.
Correct, because
so
it has to go through design review.
And so it goes through the lens of the Historic Preservation Commission's
interpretation of
station
the
of
code,
compatible.
of the code.
That's why we have separate compatibility for what you would build. Compatibility for 89A is completely different than compatibility for downtown in the
Right.
historic district.
So it
Not
would,
the same.
it would be the Historic Preservations Commission interpretation of the code that you just read, as opposed to the DRB's interpretation of the
Correct.
code that you just read.
Exactly.
So there would be that incremental adjustment, you know, favor towards historic preservation, but it's very incremental.
What was your question?
So we would just be using the development standards to come up with that
Correct.
subjective criteria?
So we would be looking at the development standards for the specific zoning district, right? And that would be part of what we look at. And then the design review would be through the lens of all of those things that I just read. Visual compatibility, it's basically, does it fit in with that area?
And we would have a very tight, I guess we call them
Attitude.
rubrics, but this is, I think someone else referred to it as a matrix. We could look at someone's design plan that's not adhering to the ordinance and say, but it's not compatible with this.
Right.
It's almost, I don't know if you're actually putting that, it seems to me like the applicant is getting run through circles, because he's just gonna be back at the same place that he started when he opted out.
That was the weight I was.
Right, so either you can do this as an overlay, right? We look at everything all at once, approve it all at once.
Or you can go through this long, hard out process
Or
and
you go
still be
through
back
this-
right where you
Right,
started
and-
anyway.
Exactly. Or you're gonna go through every single step.
Okay, wow. All right,
No,
Commissioner
not-
Lindner. Oh, sorry.
I'm sorry.
Go ahead.
Not to belabor this anymore
Oh, no.
than we already have.
Please.
So are there,
Ah.
like, is there a recent case study sort of example of where like a developer or a builder has had a disagreement and the design review board has applied that sort of subjective criteria? How does that go to the council? Like, how's that argument made? Like, what are the,
Sure.
how would we do that? Like, can you explain that in?
Yeah, definitely. So,
Thank you.
for instance, if a project were to come to Historic Preservation Commission as a design review board, and the design, you said, this is what you need to do to make this project compatible with the surrounding built environment, right? And they say, no way, I'm not doing any of that. First of all, it goes to town council for them to approve or deny. The applicant can say, no way, I'm not doing any of that, and they appeal to the,
Municipal court, isn't it?
no, Board of Adjustment. which
Oh,
is
well,
town council.
which is town council, right?
Right, exactly. So what happens at town council is, I get up and I say, here's the process we went through. We did this public hearing, we did this mailing, we notified these people, we held this meeting, these were the comments we received. These are this is how we've talked to this developer, we've advised them to do these things. Historic Preservation Commission, sitting as design review board, advised them that they needed to do these things. They don't want to do them, ta-da. And council decides whether or not they're going to comply or not comply. If the council says, so sorry, you're gonna have to do this, this needs to fit in with our community, and the developer still objects, then it goes to Superior Court.
They were there somewhere.
Right, there's court, and it always ends up at court.
Right. Commissioner Linder, did I see a hand up?
Yes. So again,
Yeah.
you know my background and trust but verify. And I would really like for our town attorney to let us know if this is truly a requirement, that there's an opt-out clause, or if this is simply a desire on the part of our existing staff and council to have something that's not as controversial as the actual ordinance would be. Because again,
Repeat that again, I missed that
yeah,
part.
I said that I would like for our town attorney to communicate to this commission whether or not it is an absolute requirement to allow an opt-out clause, or if this is simply the desire of the current staff / council desire to have something that is not as quite as controversial and more flexible. Because again, trust but verify. I want to really know from a legal basis, because we all know that people will just say Prop 207 and expect you to kind of run away without truly showing any damage. And this did not come up when this commission was established. When this commission was established, there was a goal for historic preservation ordinance in the commercial district. We knew that preservation ordinance in the residential district would be much more difficult, specifically because of the 207 issue. But this whole concept of opt-out did not come up in this commission until we had some of the meetings and some of the comments from the audience. And so again, I want to know if it's an absolute, I want to know if it's an
There,
absolute.
because that is not true. We absolutely did talk about Prop 207. We talked about having this being an overlay district because of that regulation.
That's not what I said. I said the concept of opt-out did not come
Right,
out.
that's what the
So
opt-out is based
So
on.
if you
is
want to, okay, fine.
that's based on the Proposition 207 language,
I
is that
want
we
the
cannot
attorney-
mandate it.
I want to hear that from an attorney.
Okay.
Yeah, because this is the first time I've seen the opt-out.
Me too.
clause.
Well, so when we first started talking with, what's his
Froke.
name? John Froke, the first meeting, he brought this up and we talked about this being an overlay
Yeah,
because of Prop 207, and we cannot force people to, we cannot impose new regulations like this because of this Prop 207.
That's why you have a certificate of hardship.
right.
Excuse me, I just want
Okay,
to
go ahead.
clarify,
Yeah.
we discussed Prop 207 in our last meeting.
Yes.
I reviewed.
2
I
weeks
mean,
ago
it
or
was
in
4 weeks
October?
ago.
Okay,
4 weeks
okay.
ago.
In
And we,
our October meeting, and
Okay.
although it's not in the minutes, which are very light, it was in my notes that I did review, even though I didn't see this part of the document. So we did discuss 207, and when we saw this draft document, we saw this in draft a month ago, because this isn't the first time that I've read the ordinance, and we called it something else a month ago.
But it
There
doesn't,
was the opt out. We
No.
didn't call it opting
No.
out, but there.
right here, it doesn't.
it's not opt out, it's opt in.
But we did discuss Prop 207 in our last meeting. However, I would like to just, language is a powerful tool, and I don't know that I agree with the use of the word controversial, but I do think I would like to see a means to make the language more rigorous.
I agree.
I would like to see a means by which people really do want to be in the historic district and follow the historic ordinance. And perhaps it would behoove us to hear directly from the attorney, the town attorney. If he's gonna be picky about my vocabulary, I'd like to know why.
The-
We want to continue discussing this, or do you want to wait until we get the attorney opinion?
We have other comments, I think.
Well, let's move forward. I think we've beaten this down pretty good. I think it's clear that I don't think any of the commissioners really like this B thing in here. It seems like that, or it needs to be changed or something.
Well, but the reality of the situation, it could just be a litigious situation, and we
Right.
have to follow it.
I can see
You
that
should
the app,
ask Flagstaff how trying to mandate things has worked for them.
Okay.
They have been sued several times.
That was gonna be when we looked at other ordinances, the language was
Exactly.
much stricter than the other ordinances. Some of them were older, but that, I don't recall that there were opt-out or opt-in clauses in
Opt-in.
those.
It
Yeah.
was opt-in. It's always been opt-in.
Okay.
Always been opt-in.
it seems to me though, that even if they don't opt in, they're still gonna end up here anyway. So what, it's not actually being, it's misleading to the applicant.
Here's how you should about this.
Yeah, it's misleading to the applicant though, I think, to have that in there.
Well, no, they can still
It's-
apply for the hardship certificate.
But then they're back into the Historic Preservation Commission, or
Yeah, so-
overlay district.
So why wouldn't that just be the go-to instead
Instead
of
of the
having that
opt.
upfront opt out? I mean,
I
we
agree.
heard from council that they didn't want, this to be an onerous process
Right.
for either the staff or the commissions.
I think this makes it onerous.
I think it does. It's confusing because it's not straightforward. That exists. And, again, you buy an historic building, you kind of know what the requirements are before you buy it.
I've been in the construction.
I'm sorry, I
improvement
didn't hear what
business.
you said. Could you
You
repeat
said you
that?
buy a historic building, you know what the requirements are before you buy it,
Right.
right?
I mean, I've been in the permitting construction business my entire career, and this to me is like it's a quicksand, because it doesn't really tell me where I'm gonna end up.
Well,
It actually does if we can finish this.
Okay.
So.
All right,
The way that, again, the way that the Prop 207 impacts development and ordinances, right? Is
Right.
that if a municipality cannot adopts ordinances that impact the diminution of value, we get sued.
right, but this ordinance, okay,
That's what it is. So it takes
That's the-
one property owner to say, if you require me, if you adopt this ordinance and require me to abide by it, after this Prop 207 was adopted, was ratified by the voters in the state of Arizona, right?
and we're gonna force them to increase the value of their home, they're gonna.
But they may not their home, their
Their
commercial
building.
property,
Right,
right? But they may not see it that way. I don't think I think it's true. I think that if you were to redo based on this, you would increase the value of your property without a doubt. There is all of the academic, all of the research with respect to historic preservation districts, point to them increasing value.
Right.
Unfortunately, this is the language of the statute that I have to plan for.
I don't understand how somebody could possibly sue the town when all the academic data goes the other direction.
Unfortunately, that statute, the burden of proof is on us.
Okay,
So they don't have.
who has to pay our court costs if we win?
You know
They
what?
do.
Okay. Just curious. I'm trying to get a,
I'm
I know,
It's not-
I dealt with this in Clackamas County for 30 years. The fear of getting sued kept everybody in blocks. I mean, literally, nothing happens there. And I don't want to see that happen here.
Is
So
it,
anyways, go ahead,
is it
Amy.
incumbent upon the applicant to prove that following our ordinance would diminish the value of their property?
It's on us.
It's not,
We have to prove that it does not.
So do we have any examples in town where that has been the case?
In Clarkdale?
Yes.
No. In Flagstaff, yes. I think there's been some in Fountain Hills.
No, I mean where the ordinance has actually improved the value and the people did not win their case.
I don't think we've done any substantial changes to land use ordinances that would do that. We haven't really
So-
changed, we haven't changed any development standards that would impact the value of development and
Okay.
projects.
So I guess my question is, how many suits have there been in the state against towns that have put this ordinance? And how many times has the town
It's
won?
not just this, it's any ordinance.
Well, sure, yeah.
Right, and again, this is.
Well,
we
this is a
talked to-
specific ordinance though.
Right, I talked to to Cottonwood before we went down this
Mhm.
path to make sure to find out what they did and how they did it and what they would have done differently. And they specifically adopted it as an overlay district
Right.
to avoid the legal
Right.
issues that would be caused if it were mandated.
I know, but okay, I guess we'll talk to we need to talk to Stephen, I guess.
All right,
Okay.
we can do that.
Could we ask the legal counsel to maybe give us an example of from Flagstaff or somewhere nearby?
Yeah, how many suits, the 207 suits have been instigated against towns with historic preservation ordinances and what the outcomes have been?
I don't know that there will be any that were specific to historic preservation ordinances.
Well, because that's the only ones that matter to us.
Right, but it's not the only one that matters to the town. To the town administration, because we have to defend against these lawsuits. So if we adopt this ordinance,
Okay,
right,
okay,
and we get sued, the
Through this
town
ordinance.
has to defend itself in that lawsuit.
right,
So if it may not be that there is a historic preservation ordinance that has been adopted and challenged in court. Right?
okay,
So what I'm trying to say here is that there are instances where ordinances that have changed development standards and that have been more restrictive, have been adopted,
Mhm.
challenged, and the municipalities have either settled out of court or backed off.
okay. Let Commissioner Linder.
So I could see a situation where an owner of a building for 40 years finally decides to do something with it and tries to, invoke 207. Tries to, okay? That's an entirely different situation than somebody who comes in and buys a piece of property 3 months ago, knowing that this ordinance was in place. Because I don't see how this ordinance being in place could devalue that property when that party did not own the subject property when the ordinance was passed. So it seems like, the fear of 207 applies to existing owners, but not to new developers or new owners. And so it seems like we are hurting ourselves by automatically allowing some kind of an opt-out for everybody instead of just those that may have some kind of a claim. And then getting back to filing a lawsuit, it's up to the town to decide whether or not they choose to fight the lawsuit or go in and negotiate some type of a settlement and those types of things. So not everything is going to cost the town millions of dollars. If the developer or the owner really had a case, it would be documented very much like this certificate of hardship, and somebody could make the evaluation that, yes, this is legitimate, this is where maybe somebody should back down on this instead of pretending like this doesn't exist at all. And I guess that's what I object to is this blanket opt-out clause, because again, that did not come up in our conversations until we had conversations with the public.
So,
Okay,
so
go ahead.
And
I
I'm.
wanna
gonna
move on, 'cause this is
Because we have
getting-
had that language and we've had that discussion when John Froke's first meeting, we talked about that.
Okay.
He
I don't
came in
remember.
and discussed the Prop 207 issue.
Okay, well, yeah, I know, we agree, we know it's all there, okay. And thank you, Ruth, I'm sorry, we're breaking you over the coals on this, but let's move on to the rest of the document, because we're not gonna sort this out until we have Stephen with us, okay? One more
I would
comment.
would just like to restate that there may be nothing that the commission can do. I mean, and we're going to defer to some legal counsel or legal introduction, but it may just be that we have to embrace a piece of state law. I'm just wondering, as far as organization goes, if we put this piece of properties that adhere to the requirements, but if we put it in the back, if we bury the lead, and put it in the same place with the, I'm sorry, it was highlighted in yellow, certificate of hardship.
Right,
Like, instead of saying from
I
the
think-
get-go, you don't have to embrace the historic preservation ordinance. We talk about what it is, and then at the end, it's like, if there's a hardship and you can't possibly adhere to these lovely,
which would be the
recommendations,
207 trigger,
Yeah.
hardship.
then go, it's gonna be hard, but, go through the hardship clause.
Right.
So maybe it's not, we're going to have to accept state law. But maybe if we put it someplace else in the document, because it has been present. Sorry.
Okay,
All right. Development standards. So we were talking through the development standards. Can we go back to these pages, Gus?
he's got it up there.
415?
Yeah,
Yep.
very bond.
Oh, he's got 2 of 15. 4 of 15.
There we go.
We're only on page 4 of 15.
So that's just the order. 9 of 20, if you prefer.
Right. Looks like the board.
It's this
I
one.
can't see them. I'm there.
Got it? Okay, again, so this is where we talk about the exterior wall design, materials and finishes. Again, just identifying the parts that we refer to in the ordinance so that people who don't do this for a living can understand what it is that we're talking about.
Okay,
Again, so just going through some of those, for existing buildings, preservations of these design features is required. The use of brick or stone masonry is required. Masonry, maybe structural veneer. We talk about stucco, roof and parapet walls, that you have to have a roof or a parapet wall if you have to restore the roof or parapet, you have to preserve or restore the existing parapet wall. If one was there, it needs to be put back or repaired. We will allow metal roofing, not medical roofing. And that rooftop mechanical equipment screened from public view. So standing from the street, you want to be able to look up and not see it. Yes, sir.
I think in general, these are good, but as I was reading through it earlier, I thought there could be a better way to organize it, so it's clear on what's new construction and what's
Okay,
original.
sure.
So I do have recommendations, I can send them to you.
Sure, that would be great.
The part about stone masonry and brick, I don't think stone masonry fits, there's no stone masonry anywhere downtown. That's just brick.
just Mason.
I'm walking down Main Street thinking,
It's all brick, right?
I don't think there's any stone anywhere. I think you're correct.
There's some on page 415, but it's not historic. It's from the 50s on the the, mine on Main.
Ah,
Oh, the stack rock.
Yeah, and also on the Main Street Cafe, the same flagstone. Right. But that's, that's,
Again, I would argue maybe that should have been brick, but right on.
No, this is the time for the details, so take that out.
And again, I have lots of little comments, but the other one I noticed was, under storefront, stores, windows, awnings. The rounded arches is called out, but there are several different types of panels on the different buildings, not just arches. I wondered if we could define those so that there are options for new construction. Doesn't have to be arches. That's just one example. They're all different for a reason. Oh, I'm sorry, 6 of 50.
So page 6 of 15, the arches. Rounded arches should be incorporated, so give examples of all the arches and not just this one.
wait.
I mean, there are different shapes. I don't know what. to
Well,
call
like the
them.
bookstore
Panels.
doesn't really have arches, but it's got the columns.
Right.
With
Yeah.
the panel in between them.
Right, that's got the column, sure. So we can do some
Of a
more
different-
detail.
And, sorry, one more question. The section about metal, so I'm jumping around, roof and parapets under metal roofing.
Mhm.
Is there a reason that that's called out specifically? I mean, you can't see the roofing material behind the parapets. Is there a reason that metal is?
Only for new construction. If someone wanted to use it in infill construction or new construction, that's when, so these kind of have to serve two masters, rehab and new infill.
Thank you. Okay, I
Anything else?
think we can move along.
All right.
Siren page.
Let's see, that was page 5 of 15. Anybody else have anything on that one?
New. Okay. I think we're good. Go ahead and move along.
All right, 6 of 15, that was where we talk about the rounded arches, steel doors, canopies and awnings. Site features, and this really speaks to some of the details about landscaping. Any on-site lighting that it is in compliance with dark sky, it doesn't detract from downtown. Installation of benches, if somebody wants to put benches out. The sidewalk cafe language, if someone wants to do a sidewalk cafe, that's an additional permit application. But that is one we could incentivize to do as part of the Historic Preservation Commission. I'm sorry, it just dawned on me, so,
There's a P missing in responsible there on the A.
I'm sorry?
There's a P missing in responsible on an A on the landscaping. Property owner is responsible.
So for all of
Oh,
these site features, the language says reflect the historic district's significance. I don't think any of these features really do that. I think the language should say don't detract from the significance of individual buildings as they contribute to the district. Does that make sense?
Yes.
Indeed.
So like as an example, if you're gonna put up a planter, the planter shouldn't be large and cover the characteristics that make the property eligible.
Okay, so don't detract from the individual buildings. The historic features of the historic features of individual building.
And I think it's more useful to think about it in terms of the way that the features would affect the individual characteristics of the buildings, not the significance of the district as a whole.
Sure. So building rather than district. Okay, got it.
Everybody else like that? I see nods. Okay. Good. Right. we don't want to make the applicant feel responsible for the whole district. He's got his own building to deal with.
So we'll
He's got
stop
enough
there. We don't want
on
to
his
create-
plate.
You're exactly right. We don't want somebody putting in a planter that's going to obscure details of the
Right.
building
Well, they could do one that was appropriate for the time period,
or size.
if there was one, I
Right.
mean, whatever's historical for that period, they could do something appropriate.
All right,
Okay,
so review process.
okay,
So this is the review process that the projects would go through as part of the historic preservation ordinance. So we will require a pre-application review meeting. And that's a meeting where we have a submittal from the applicant that describes what it is they want to do. We need elevation so that we can see what exactly they're going to be doing to the building, whether it's going to enhance or detract from the building in the district. Renderings, all of those kinds of things that we typically see for projects like this. So we get all that information together and then we sit down and we have a meeting with them and talk about what the town requires. With respect to the ordinance, any feedback from the Public Works Department, any place like that, Parks and Rec, so forth. So, and we also included a number of agencies, APS, Unisource, ADOT, Health Department, those kinds of things to make sure that all of our bases are covered before someone gets too far down the road. So this gives them an idea when they actually submit an application, what it is that we're going to be looking for. So, we do have language in here about permits with special circumstances. So typically when you have somebody wants to not follow, has a reason why they should not have to follow the letter of the law, we issue a variance. And that's a specific process they have to go through with a public hearing before town council. This language allows us to roll some of those variances, as long as they're area variances, in with the approval of the project. So that's one of the reasons to do this, because we can grant you the flexibility up front, right? Rather than having them wait 90 days to go to town council, or 60 days, whichever it takes to get in front of town council, to get that part approved, and then come back and pick up where we left off and continue on through the process. So the state of Arizona is specific about the reasons why you can issue a variance. We've repeated those here. Can't be contrary to health, safety, or best interest of the public. Enforcement of the provision shall cause an unnecessary hardship that is neither economic or self-imposed. Condition unique to the property which was not created by the property owner. No adverse effect on surrounding properties, and the variance is not contrary to the intent of the historic preservation ordinance. And then again, all other development performance standards is found in the underlying zoning district. So this would, so by opting into this, right, there are benefits to doing it that will speed up your development process. And this is one of them. And again, a disclaimer here, nothing in this ordinance shall be construed to prevent ordinary maintenance, cleaning, repair, painting of any structure in the historic district which does not alter or modify the historic character of the structure. So if you're going to wash your windows or do something like that, you don't have to come to Historic Preservation Commission, you can just wash them. So certificate of appropriateness, the applications for the certificate of appropriateness shall be submitted to the Town of Clarkdale Community Development Department. And again, once you've cleared that pre-application review, this would be the next step. You would then come in and submit for a certificate of appropriateness. This is where we do preliminary review at the staff level. If it meets all of the requirements in the code, in the ordinance, then it can be approved as long as it's a minor certificate of appropriateness. So those are the ones, like I said, clearly within development standards, doesn't significantly alter the character and appearance of the property. Historic Preservation Commission will be notified. Here's what they proposed. Here's what was approved. Here's how it met all of the requirements. A major certificate of appropriateness would be for a much larger project or a project where staff is unable to reach an agreement with the applicant at the minor certificate of appropriateness level. So if, for instance, we say to someone, no, you cannot pull the facade off and replace it, or no, you cannot pull the display windows out and replace them with tinted glass. Well, I'm going to do it. Well, no, you're not. Well, yes, I am. Well, no, you're not. Then it comes to, okay, fine, then we're going to, we can't approve this as a minor certificate. It's going to have to go to the Historic Preservation Commission for approval as a major certificate of approval. Let's see. So we put language in about, you know, reviewing in accord, and I wanted to be very careful with the language here. In accordance with the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation and adopted design guidelines for the district. We want to be cognizant of those, the Secretary of Interior's guidelines. I think those are important to make sure everyone is aware of, you know, what is actually expected for historic preservation. But we can't invoke them and we can't require them. So that's why we mention them. You should take a look at these. This is what we're, when we're reviewing a project, this is what we're reviewing for. And then we've listed the, so in order to be granted a certificate of appropriateness, either major or minor, it will have to meet these standards, compatible with relevant historic, cultural, educational, or architectural qualities and qualities characteristic of the property, not diminish or adversely impact the integrity of the historic district, qualify for a certificate of hardship, and the commission will make these following findings of fact: substantial conformance to the design guidelines, intent of the Secretary of Interior's standards for rehabilitation, meets all applicable adopted building codes of the town of Clarkdale, compatible with the relevant historic character of the property, and again, does not diminish or impact the integrity of the historic district. We put those findings of fact in just to document and substantiate what we've reviewed and what the commission has found. Any questions about any of that?
Commissioner Biggins?
In the beginning of the review process, section 170.030, section B, all commercial building permit or demolition application located in a historic shall be reviewed by community development staff for classification either minor or major certificate appropriateness as follows. But we don't talk about certificate appropriateness as minor, major. We talk about this minor and major work. And then we don't get to what minor and major is until we get to the next page 9. I don't know. It feels disconnected to me that those aren't.
We can change it to
near
major,
what
right?
you know what I mean?
Yep.
We're going back and forth. which is
Yeah.
great.
Yeah.
Uh,
Oh, so I'm on page 715.
That,
Because it says minor or major certificate of appropriateness as follows, but then we don't talk about minor or major certificate of appropriateness.
Yep,
We
we'll
talk
just-
about work.
we'll change those.
Well, then you would have to somehow the definition has to tie with B and C on page 9 of 15. It almost feels like B and C on page 9 of 15 should be over on page 7 in some form. Does that make sense?
I got it. I know what you're talking
Yeah,
about.
it's disconnected.
I had the same.
Okay, good. And then real quick on bullet 2 under B on 7 of 15. It says historic preservation design guidelines, section 3-170. Is there supposed to be another section?
No, that's this whole thing.
Okay, I wasn't sure if we were supposed to be pointing to a more detailed section or not. One last thing, if I could.
Sure.
On page 8 of 15, number 2. The last sentence in that paragraph, or one of them says fences and walls and the number of required off-street parking and loading space can be recommended for approval. Should it be may be recommended?
It can be recommended for approval, and I'm sorry,
Should it be may? Isn't it usually shalls and mays versus
And
shalls and wills, or I don't know, canned, I don't know.
There's not enough time in the evening for me to explain to you
rewrite it.
those modals, so let's.
Well, when somebody say is can, okay, I thought it should be may. So everybody else,
it's may
No.
and shall be.
Shall is imperative and may is optional.
I know, but can isn't,
Also optional.
okay. I'm not a English expert, but if everybody was okay with them, okay.
Okay,
That's all I have.
thank you. Commissioner Linder.
Okay, so I'm at the top of 8 of 15. Number 1, when a building permit is sought from the town to demolish, alter, remodel.
Who filled that all?
So I think that we had discussed this when we were looking at the other format. I believe that we no longer have a historic preservation specialist. And that requests to demolish always come to the Historic Preservation Commission.
So I do believe we have language about demolition in here.
Yeah, it's in another section.
Right.
There's a whole section related to that. But I don't think that we refer to a certificate of no effect being issued by the preservation specialist. That was in a very early draft. But I thought that was dropped the last time we discussed this, who is the historic preservation specialist?
That would be staff.
Wouldn't be a designated person, it would just be just all of the staff.
I don't know that it would be a specific person. Right now, it would probably be me. But in the future, we may have somebody that is a designated historic preservation specialist.
Yeah, I think in the last time we discussed this, that language was going to come out. And if it's staff, it should say staff.
Thought we were moving away from specialists.
Yeah, I
as
thought
well.
that.
So if we started with a historic preservation officer and then went to specialist.
That was
That's HR terminology and not credentialing terminology.
right.
You just call people specialists, so I can see the concern. It's a linguistic issue and I can see the concern, so perhaps it's just it needs to be refers to your department or whatever department would, whatever.
So we can say the community development director or his, her designee.
Yes.
Okay, yeah.
Yeah, I just think that the whole structure of number 1 is a little bit misleading because there's specific requirements for demolishing and remodeling. And if you just read number 1 by itself, it sounds like that the historic preservation specialist could issue a certificate of no effect
Right.
for demolishing or moving, which is not the case because those 2 instances were always supposed to come to the Historic Preservation Commission. And I think that is provided for on page 11 of 15.
All right, we'll take another look at that.
Deferred.
So,
There's parallel.
yeah,
language
so as I recall, we were going to remove the words demolish and move because that's someplace else. Yeah, I just don't think that the comments that we discussed in number 1 made it to this draft. That's
We'll go back and review the notes.
Okay. And then I have a question on number 4 on the same page 8 of 15 regarding the painting. So
Go ahead, Ruth. Okay, go ahead.
yeah, so there is painting that does alter or modify the historic nature of a structure. So I'm not really sure what number 4 is saying. Does this say that we're saying you can paint anything you want, any color you want? Or are we saying that painting is subject to review as to whether or not it alters or modifies the historic character of the structure? I'm just a little bit confused by.
Maybe a repainting might be.
Well, I can tell you that SHPO does not regulate paint or paint colors.
They don't care. If all the brick building on Main Street got painted, they wouldn't blink.
We might care.
Yeah, but they would,
SHPO is like,
even given
Well,
the devastating effects of brick, of paint on brick.
yeah, I don't think that there's really a whole lot they can do.
All right,
And again, we have to keep that in front of mind as well, is, you
Right.
know, we can't regulate every single thing that a property owner does. And I do think that we talked about, painting in the guidelines about,
Well, do we need to have including painting in there? Couldn't we just add maintenance, cleaning and repair?
there's something about painting in the guidelines here.
Just take it out.
Painting of brick is discouraged.
Yes,
Right.
painting of brick is discouraged.
So
Just take it out.
paint colors has come up in design review meetings
Yep.
quite a bit, yeah.
right. That was just thinking of, can we just paint color in
So,
here?
well, I agree that, you know, painting of trim is temporary, painting of the entire structure is not, especially if it's brick. So I just think that, yeah, that needs to be looked at.
Tom, where was that exactly?
And if they were gonna paint something, you know, the same color that was already approved in the past, well, yeah, I totally agree, they don't have to come back to review to repaint something the exact same color. But
I
if
think
they're,
repainting
if
would
they're
be,
going to some like bright purple, you know, and before it was a muted tan or brown,
Highlighted orange.
page 5 of 15,
Got it, yep.
at the top, basically.
Brick is like, right. Painting of brick is discouraged unless replicating historic signage or installation of murals.
right,
Yeah, it just says it's discouraged, doesn't say it's prohibited,
Right.
so.
could we change that to repainting, because that would, because if it's already been painted, then that would kind of jump some of the discussion we're having on the painting, because I think
Yeah,
new
exactly.
painting is what the commissioner seems to be more concerned about than repainting.
I would, just real quick
Commissioner
comment, because when you add including painting, it's an example of maintenance, cleaning, repair, just take it out. Just put maintenance, cleaning and repair. I mean, which does not alter or modify the historic character.
Including painting.
Just take the including painting out. And then we can fall back on the other part, right, which is still a little vague, but.
So the bookstore has a painted doorway and painted side light windows. If they decide to repaint that, do they have to come to the Historic Preservation Commission to do that?
I'm just reading
I
this
think only
sentence.
the colors are gonna be crazy, but I don't know how you
Well-
put that in there.
Well, this whole sentence is kind of open-ended. Nothing in this ordinance shall be construed to prevent ordering and maintenance, cleaning and repair. Well, there's a lot that can go into maintenance, cleaning and repair. You gave an example, basically including painting,
Right.
but you didn't have to do that. So it really comes down, what does maintenance, cleaning and repair include?
Right, which does not alter or modify the historic
Yes.
character of the
Right.
structure, so they wouldn't actually be able to paint a garish color on there, because it would modify the character.
Yeah.
Right?
You think?
Well, that was my question. I'm not sure, based on what they says.
I guess we need to, when does ordinary maintenance, cleaning and repair alter or modify the historic character of the structure is what we would need to know.
Well, you could say painting is a maintenance, and if it tries to alter, you're saying you can't do that. I would put painting under maintenance. That's what I would, I don't know.
So if they decide they want to change the color of the paint of the door, what's the process going to be? If they decide to repaint that door and they say, instead of painting it green, we're gonna paint it tan.
I think the staff could say, well, that doesn't alter the character of the building, historic, and you could approve that, but if they want to paint it fluorescent something, then maybe it should come in front of the commission.
Yeah, there's an example in Cottonwood of that green building that all of a sudden appeared that used to be tan.
Yeah.
All right, certificate of appropriateness,
Thank you. Moving on,
Number, please.
8 of
page 8
15.
of 15. So again, this goes back through for a certificate of appropriateness, before we can issue a building permit, you have to have a certificate of appropriateness. This goes through all of the items that are required for an application. This again talks about the minor certificate of appropriateness and the major certificate of appropriateness, right?
Mhm.
And so what is approvable as a minor certificate of appropriateness and what is required for a major certificate of appropriateness. So for a minor one, the proposed work is clearly within the development standards, limited to work that does not significantly alter the character and appearance of the property. Approval authorizes the issue of permits required by the building official. That one actually should come last. Approval of a minor certificate of appropriateness serves as design review board approval. HPC will be notified of approval of stipulations, or denial of application at the next regular meeting. If a minor certificate is not issued, right? If the work is not within the development standards, if it is not limited to work that does not significantly alter, a major certificate of appropriateness shall be required.
And the staff is the doorkeeper on that.
Correct. So again, when we make recommendations to them about what their project needs to look like, and they say, man, I'm not gonna do it, but I still want to be part of this ordinance. I want my speedy review, but I don't want to do all of these things. Then we say, all right, well, if we can't reach an agreement here, then you're gonna have to go to Historic Preservation Commission.
Just a comment.
Commissioner Lindberg.
On number 5 on page 9 of 15, B5, I thought that we had discussed maybe a different method of just notifying the entire public of these application approvals in more real time, so that we're not waiting until whether or not we have a monthly meeting or not, because people start asking questions as soon as they see work commence.
Right.
So rather than me picking up the phone and calling Ruth and saying, what's going on? I see somebody, demolishing something down at the Catholic Church over there. I'd be able to see this application over here and what it was and the fact that it was approved simply by going online. And rather than just singling out HPC for notification, you just should put it on the town website. This was approved.
All right, so we can just skip the HPC notification and just put it on the website that it was approved.
Yeah. If that's okay.
Isn't that what is happening with all the other applications? No other applications are putting it on the website when they're.
No, I mean, we put the applications in as they come in prior to approval.
Right. And then
But
whether
like-
they're approved or not is if you have
That's
to.
in the approving body's minutes.
Right.
So that would be town council.
So that would be the publicity.
Yep.
Okay.
So again, the major certificate of appropriateness shall be subject to the review and approval of the Historic Preservation Commission and the building official for all major new construction, significant restoration, alteration, demolition, or other major construction activity in the Clarkdale Historic District. So those are basically the things that we look at. So you're talking about either a completely new structure, or we are talking about a substantial rehabilitation of or renovation of an existing building. All right, certificate of hardship. So we had a little bit of trouble with this one, trying to balance this with the language in the variance. They are somewhat contradictory because this one is based on obviously economic need, but the variance I think is, well, I don't think I know, the variance is a separate subsection of what would be approved. So we would be essentially approving variances to the standards as part of this approval. Again, parking stalls, those kinds of things, rather than a certificate of hardship for the whole project. So the purpose of this is to grant leniency in applying standards or historic preservation guidelines to a proposed rehab project where demonstrated economic hardship exists. So we have demonstration of hardship shall not be based on or include any of the following circumstances: willful or negligent acts by the owner, purchase the property for substantially more than market value, failure to perform normal maintenance and repairs, failure to diligently solicit retained tenants, or failure to provide normal tenant improvements. So what we're trying to do here is eliminate those things that are under the control of a building owner, that by just benign neglect or deferral of maintenance has caused the building to fall into disrepair and to reach a condition where it is no longer economically viable to rehabilitate it. So the cost of rehab would exceed the cost of the building is basically what we're talking about. So section B talks about properly assessing requests for a certificate of hardship. Again, the historic preservation specialist shall request and receive from the applicant this information, and we've listed all of it. So we'll change that to CDD.
Right.
And again, a report from a licensed engineer or architect, assessed value of the land, building and fire code violations, and any other federal, state, or local citations which have determined the building to be a nuisance under applicable law. So they would go through the same process for a certificate of hardship that we would go through for a certificate of appropriateness. So it would be the same review process. If it were simple, which it probably will not be, it will be approved by staff. It is not simple, which it probably will be not simple. It will be before the Historic Preservation Commission. Any questions?
Yes, I have a question. I think I had talked to you about some, and Tom, about some language in this section regarding that the town supporting people applying for certificate of hardship with, you know, various grants and opportunities so that they could overcome the hardship or maybe eliminate the need for the hardship.
Gotcha. So to provide them information?
Right, support for applying for grants and other economic and material support for their project. I don't have it all worked out worded wise, but I know we talked about this.
Yeah.
I had sent something to you about that.
All righty.
Was that language in a previous, some form of that language?
No, it was, I don't know, it was after last month's meeting, I came in and I stopped by with something and
Could have been.
we
Yeah.
talked about it. It didn't come up in this meeting, but it was after the meeting. It was just an idea that it was like, since the town has knowledge of resources that could help applicants,
Sure.
that information should be given to them when they apply for the
Oh,
hardship.
right.
So it might actually eliminate the need for it.
We do that now. I have some contacts that are developers that specialize in historic preservation projects, especially in small communities. I provide a contact.
Yeah, just a
information to them.
resource
Yep.
list or something,
Yep.
just so they have that, and just so they get that, they know they're getting that support from the town, that they're not just out there twisting in the
Yep.
wind.
All righty, demolition and moving of buildings and structures. It is the intent of this ordinance to preserve the historic and architectural resources within the historic district. However, it is recognized that there can be circumstances beyond the control of a property owner which may result in the necessary demolition of a structure within the historic district. These circumstances include a building which constitutes an imminent safety hazard, which involves a resource whose loss does not diminish or adversely affect the integrity of the district, or which imposes an economic hardship on its owners as follows. So no permit shall be issued to move or demolish all or any part of a building or other structure in the historic district without approval of a certificate of appropriateness as established in this section. A request for demo shall be exempt from these requirements if the building official determines, according to the criteria set forth in a code, that the building is an imminent safety hazard to the public and necessary repairs would be impractical. Building officials so first notify the historic preservation specialist, and we'll change that, in writing before issuing the demolition permit. If demolition approval is not granted, then no permit shall be issued for a period of 1 year. A subsequent demolition application may be made and granted for property which has previously been subject of the 1-year demolition permit denial if new facts or circumstances can be presented in support of the application. If demolition approval is granted on any basis other than that of an imminent hazard, hardship, or upon expiration of a restraint of demolition, a demolition permit shall not be used until a redevelopment or reuse plan for the property has received a certificate of appropriateness. So they have to come in with a plan for what they're going to do once that building is demolished and moved. Any questions on that section?
Just real quick back to, page 11 and 15, we have a historic preservation specialist on
Yep, I
item
got
B.
that
I
line.
didn't know if we caught it. Okay, sorry.
That's fine. So any questions on that section?
Same comment on page 12 of 15D.
Yep, I've got that red line as well.
Okay.
Hey,
All
well,
right.
it's close.
And then we have on page 13 and 15 is the flow chart for the historic district certificate of appropriateness flow chart. And this just shows you how this project, how this process works.
And thank you for the flow charts. Those are very helpful.
Yeah, it kind of makes things a little bit easier. So when we talk about the form-based code standards on page 4 of 15, again, that's that table we showed you last month. We will be developing those for the district, the zoning districts that would apply downtown.
You included that box, stacked box thing that we talked about too, so.
Yes. And then the last page is a graphic for the street,
Yeah.
for Main
section.
Street, for the traffic lanes, parallel parking, parallel parking, trees and benches. So it just kind of breaks that street up into segments. And shows you like an awning and a metal canopy, both from above and a side view, a cross-section view as well. Any questions on those?
I see none.
All right, we are done.
Thank you, Ruth.
May I ask one quick question on the overlay? Sorry.
Go ahead.
On the
Commissioner
overlay
Wiggins.
zone, I didn't realize that was such a major change to the document. My question is that a rezoning that has to be approved by the property owners or the town citizens, the overlay? It's a rezoning of
This
prop-
ordinance, this
the
entire,
overlay zone.
Right.
Is this a new zone that has to be approved by the town or the property owners?
so this goes through an entire, just like any other zoning ordinance, goes through an approval process. Once the commission has reached agreement on language, it goes to the town attorney for review, comes back, it goes to the planning commission for a public hearing, then it goes to town council for final approval. It's, we publish new notices in the newspaper.
Does there have to be 2 hearings or just one?
Just
2
one.
readings or just 1 reading?
Just one reading. And for this one, we will notify all the property owners in the historic district because it directly affects them.
That's what I wanted to know. Okay, thank you.
All right,
Okay, let's move on to the bandstand.
bandstand. So we had the joint meeting with town council regarding the bandstand, and we talked a little bit about the historic building assessment. So staff will be moving forward with the voluntary consultation with SHPO. I have a meeting with them tomorrow to talk about what it is that what exactly they want from us with respect to improvements. I think the engineer's report pretty much lays out what can be done. And again, it's until we start working on it, it's hard to say exactly which parts will need to be replaced. And that's the conversation I'll be having tomorrow with them to get that specificity.
So does the town qualify currently for any grants to help put that together?
We could do a grant, but we've already set aside money from the general fund to do this.
Over 200,000?
Mhm.
Okay, so we've actually reallocated more money, more realistic amount of money to the project.
What did I'm trying to remember what the original allocation, I think was 180. So we'll have to go back and get some out of contingency probably, or transfer some from another project.
Well, where I was going is if we wait until after we made the ordinance, would we be more eligible for more grants to fix it? I mean, or is there, I realize time is of the essence in some people's minds with this thing. I'm just curious if we waited, if we could actually pay for it with somebody else's money.
Well, like the mayor's expressed at the joint meeting, and I'm sorry you weren't there,
Yeah.
that we had set that money aside. We have designated general funds for this as a CIP, as a capital improvement project because they want to see this get done sooner
Okay.
rather than later.
All right. It just seemed like the money, the bids that we got last time seemed to be the catalyst for a lot of things that didn't go right, so.
200 to 280, yeah, which was,
Yeah.
well, and you know, I can tell you that just as an aside, talking to the developer for the plateau, that's gone from a $5 million project to an $11 million project. That's the way construction costs have gone. So I'm not surprised that it's gone up and it'll be a while before those prices, well, we're starting to see some stabilization in the market, but not enough. So I think we're gonna probably come in, I'm guessing 2 to 225. But we'll wait and see.
All right.
So that's the upshot of the bandstand. I did want to, let's see, the historic building assessment. Just as an aside, we are talking to, Public Works is working on a contractor to come in and do the destructive testing, to drill holes, run cameras, take out bricks, all of those things, see what's living down in the parapet or in the, what's made of.
Take a survey.
home in the- What's made a home in the, what do you call it there?
Soffit, right.
Yes, thank you. I can only think of parapet.
Do a population survey.
Yes, do a population survey of squirrels.
Yeah. Okay, good.
All right,
Great. Thank you, Ruth.
Anything else?
Is there any questions, other questions for Ruth?
Oh, thank you.
Okay. Thank you. We really chewed that up and spit it out a few times. Okay, future agenda items. We've obviously have the ordinance.
You want to mention the joint?
I'm sorry.
You want to mention the joint?
Oh,
we-
right. So we have tentatively scheduled a joint meeting of the Historic Preservation Commission and the Design Review Board to take a look at the Miller Building, which is kitty corner from our office, on November 27th. That is going to depend upon whether or not the applicant has sufficient plans to review. If they don't have plans to review, there's really no sense in doing the meeting. We went ahead and tagged that date so we could do it if he was ready.
Okay, good, because I'm driving to Everett, Washington in the morning.
Future agenda items,
Yes, please.
perhaps we should restate that we've asked to have the town.
Oh, the
attorney,
town attorney,
Yep.
yes.
Which is.
Well, we can just,
The ordinance.
so rather than that, we can just have him do a legal opinion.
Oh, just print one up. Okay, yeah.
Okay. Yep.
Yeah, if he doesn't want to be present, sure.
So no dialogue, just a directive from the attorney.
Yep.
I might ask, could I receive via email the actual citation for the Arizona Revised Statute that we keep referring to? Because that would be helpful for me.
Sure. Please send that to everybody, Ruth.
Would be nice.
Thank you for asking for that, 'cause that's, I think we do need to have that in front of us. Opinion, okay, all right, so that we're doing the ordinance. Obviously, I think we'll probably have more bandstand, right?
We probably will have something for bandstand.
Okay,
I don't think we'll have any reports back for the buildings by that time.
okay. Anybody else have anything else they want to put on the agenda?
Well, from our previous minutes, there was a comment about interpretive sign.
Oh, right, the signage. If you could send me a summary of what the interpretive signage includes.
Oh, so you guys were working on that, that's right.
And I don't know what this means, and I apologize, but it's on the minutes from last time, Bitter Creek Bridge.
Bitter Creek Ridge, yes.
Getting there, thank you. See, special joint council, interpretive sign bands, okay, that's all we had last time.
What about Broadway Road?
We.
What is
You
it
want an
about?
update on,
Well, we had discussions as to whether or not that was, can't remember the exact term.
well,
And
because we own the road, so the state can't designate it as historic, because they already did, and so we would need to do it to
Correct.
Include it within the ordinance. Have a discussion on it.
Yeah, but I thought we were gonna have some kind of review in terms of the fact that it was a historic road, one of the last remaining segments, and what effect that has on the upcoming work to do the widening and adding the sidewalks and so forth.
So it's not gonna be any wider than it already is. That's the road width we have, and we have to work within that.
This is the right of way.
Yeah.
By
But are we gonna see any drawings or anything like that before the work gets done?
I don't think we have final drawings yet.
I'm sorry, which road are we talking? about?
Broadway?
Cottonwood on Old Historic 89. Okay, yeah, go down the hill and hang a right or follow to the right.
Okay. Between, okay, on the Moose Lodge Road?
Yeah.
Moose Lodge Road, yeah.
What we're talking about, I think, is we're doing a sidewalk curb and gutter extension
Right,
to the Cottonwood city line with the sidewalk on one side,
curb gutter sidewalk. I think it's,
and the sidewalk on one side.
Sidewalk and path on the other side, right?
Or-
I'll have to go look at the plans.
Yeah, because there has to be something.
Right, I can't remember if it's one side or two side.
Oh, that.
It might be
okay.
two sides. I know there's bike lane. I want to say bike lanes both sides.
Right, so it's an extension of basically what's there was what I was, because we
Right.
don't have sidewalk on the west side. We of it, just the east.
Down to the bottom of the hill we do because we have a
Yes.
drainage issue down there and I think it extends past the Elks. But like I said, let me take a look at the
Yeah, it
plans.
goes to there, but past that, there's nothing on
Right.
the west side. That'd be great if they put a sidewalk on the west side. Yeah. That'd be awesome.
No.
That, I walk that road all the time, that's why. Okay,
So just to clarify on Broadway, is there a specific thing that the Historic Preservation Commission wants to weigh in on that?
We would like, well, speaking for the commission, perhaps we would like to ensure that the appearance of that historic road remains as unchanged as possible throughout this process. So we do have some historic photos of that corridor that were actually used in town presentations several years ago. And I know that prior discussions regarding the sidewalks were discussions as to whether or not the sidewalks were going to be abutted right next to the road, or perhaps they would be located somewhere else on that 200-foot right of way. So there's obviously some design options that could be implemented that would lessen the impact on the appearance of that road. So I just was wondering if that would be something that would be presented to us one way or the other.
So I can tell you that the design, like I said, is not complete. The design is dictated by engineering. And I don't know that there is a lot that the Historic Preservation Commission is going to be able to influence on that because it's a health safety issue.
it's not gonna affect the scenic views at all, because it's all gonna be on the plane,
Right.
ground plane.
Yeah, there's nothing, there's no vertical.
And we're not cutting or removing any cuts or anything like that.
No cuts. They've squeezed it all. There's enough width in between those two giant, that tunnel
Yeah.
almost.
That's falling
Uh,
under the road.
Right,
Yeah.
to get to the bike lanes and two travel lanes and sidewalking. I know it seems skinny,
They're gonna have to scrape that side of the hill.
you know, I don't think, the last design I saw showed it is with existing contours.
Because there's a rock as big as that thing that's halfway down to the road.
They'll probably have to scrape the edge of the shoulders, but
That's what I'm saying. They're gonna have
Yeah.
to scrape that all up.
Yeah.
Okay. I guess we'll have to monitor that as citizens, regular citizens. Okay, anything else? Would like to make a motion to adjourn the meeting at 8:19.
I will move to adjourn the meeting at 8:19.
Can I get a second? Second by Vice Chair Gouvard. Oh, is there any discussion? Seeing none, all those in favor?
I,
Aye, 5-0, thank you.
Thank you all.